Okay, thank you. Welcome to this meeting of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, Hampshire Firefighters Pension Board. This meeting is being held remotely and members are in attendance via video conferencing. The meeting has been live streamed on the authority's website and is also going to be available for repeat viewing afterwards. And those participating in the meeting are consenting to being recorded, and those images used for the broadcasts and the repeat broadcast purposes. So we'll just begin by naming the members of the board who are present for the public record. During the meeting, if any member of the meeting wishes to speak, if they can raise their virtual hand or alternatively use the chat function to type RTS. I will try and get around to you and try and wrestle between all of the screens and all of the papers to make sure that we're keeping everyone in line. All decisions will be reached through a calling out for members and also on an agreement for the recommendations. Any objections, please speak up. Outcome of any vote will be confirmed before moving on to the next agenda item. And just if I can remind members that the Constitution standing orders will apply, and please keep your microphones muted unless you've been called to speak, so that helps with going through the different people. So members present is myself as Chairman, Stuart Adamson. We've got Richard North, who's the Vice Chairman, in attendance, Mark Hilton, Councillor Roger Price and Richard Scarth, all from the Pensions Board. Hopefully everyone's got a good sight of the agenda, and what we'll do is we'll move on to the agenda items. At the end of the agenda items, I'm hoping to achieve that in line for about 3:30 when Claire Alcock, who's the Senior Pensions Advisor, is going to give us an update, is going to join us at that stage and give us an update from the Scheme Advisory Board response to the consultation around the Sargent case. We'll speak plenty more about that members would want to raise. So anyone wishing to raise any declarations? Nope, I'll take that as the 3-second rule. So if we can move to item 3 on your agenda packs, that's page number 3, which is minutes of the last meeting. What we'll do is we'll go through page at a time just for accuracy so that we can declare those or make any changes, and then we'll come back if there's any matters arising. So if I go through, so page 1 of the minutes, which is page 3 of the pack, please raise page 2, page 4 of the pack, page 3, page 4, 5, 6, and finally page 7, which is page 9 of your pack. Okay, so we can sign those off as a true reflection of our meeting. Now, reading through these meetings, a bit of a strange one. I seem to have given myself 3 actions throughout the meeting before, so I'm going to have to raise my game a little bit as chairman of the meeting. So just on page 4 of the, so it's page 6 of the actual of the pack, page 4 of the minutes. There was a point there which was raising about myself being the chairman of the Operations Management Board, which is the operations function for the service, and using the opportunity to raise with members of the service to increase our statistics around use of the portal. So that was done. So there was communications gone through the line management, and I'm sure we'll come to that a little bit later on with the stats. And there was also reference there to about exploring opportunities with the unions, in particular FBU, where most of our members of the pension board are. I'll come to that in a second under chairman's announcements, but I think that's a good. I think we've got a good step forward with that. So then on page number 7 of the pack, page 5 of the minutes, There's also another action for me, which was around the pre-retirement courses and making sure that we had actions, or we were able to gain access, because Claire makes access to those. I think that they're sorted. I'll just look towards Claire for confirmation that that was sorted for the next one. Yeah. So I think I suppose the next question, which is, have they started to schedule future courses, and presumably they'll include you in those future courses as well, Claire? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so minutes of the meeting done. So item number 4, if I move on, deputations. So we haven't got any deputations that have been raised. So that takes us to item number 5, whipping through. So Chairman's announcement. So I just wanted to make a formal welcome to Mark Hilton, who joins us for a first meeting today. Welcome, Mark. You're very welcome to the meeting and to the group, to the board. Mark joins as an employee rep, and importantly, and this is where that links back to the minutes of the last meeting, is closely aligned and kind of a member of representation with the Fire Brigade Union, which I think is something that's really been welcomed, a welcome progression, and will helpfully encourage wider communications with the Fire Brigade Union on matters regarding the pensions. And also, hopefully, and Mark and I have discussed this, better inform us as a board if there's other views and feelings through the membership of the Fire Brigade Union. So I think that's a really welcome step forward. So welcome to the board, Mark.
Thank you.
I was just going to mention that I attended just last week the Firefighters Pension Scheme AGM, which was quite a thought-provoking day. Met the host and hosted by the new chairman of the scheme, Joanne Livingston, who replaces our very own Malcolm Eastwood, and there were quite a number of elements on the agenda, most of which are, I guess, not a surprise around Sergeant. I know that that is later brought up in the status report. So other than that, no other real announcements. So we'll move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the Scheme Advisory Board. And for this, if we can have, if Roger is happy, Councillor Price happy to give us a verbal update. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Stu. I think a lot of the things which I would have said is contained within the agenda, because you get all the actual notices which come out from the board anyway, or from Claire, and also with Claire coming into this meeting at the end, she'll be able to give you the most up-to-date situation on the Sergeant and MacLeod cases. I think that from my point of view, we've had a number of meetings recently, and the one point which I really would like to sort of mention is that it's being suggested from pensions is there is a big risk. One is the point of view from the fire authority's point of view, and whether we should consider it being on the corporate risk register, not the pensions register, but the corporate risk register, because of the financial implications, which of extra costs to administer, and also the authority going against what other authorities may do, and therefore its reputation being at risk. That's the area which is of great concern. I think that there's been a number of meetings of just elected members of the board looking at those two issues of what we can try and do and try and persuade government that, of course, is that any extra costs which are going to be incurred, and with the MacLeod situation, is that the government picks up that bill rather than the individual authorities having to pick up the bill for the administration costs. Because if, depending upon which way members will go with their decision of when they want to take or change on the pension, is that records will have to be kept for many years, and and it will actually be individual calculations being done manually. The other risk which there is in the administration side is that there's only 2 software providers of the ways that pensions can be calculated, and therefore that is a risk. And there's a concern that, so I think I mentioned last time, of administrators wanting to drop out of doing fire pensions because they're so complicated and involved. And so there are a number of risks for fire authorities across the country. And certainly I will raise at the next fire authority meeting. I'm not quite sure where pensions sit on our corporate risk register, but I need to check that and see where it does sit and see if we do need to make any amendments to it. So really, I think all I need to say. I mean, the last pensions meeting was on the 17th of September. We dealt with pensionable pay, we dealt with administration of the scheme, abatement guidance, immediate detriment guidance, which is to do with McLeod and Sargent, age discrimination, pensions administration, and COVID. So all those issues, and I think most of all that is covered within the reports which we have before us today. So I won't reiterate all of those issues. Thank you, Stu.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Rob, do you want to come
in? Just to come back on that point in terms of the risk register, Roger. So I think it's perfectly acceptable that you as a board put it onto your risk register if you think it's a significant enough issue, and actually part of this board's role is to advise the full authority. So I think you could quite easily put in a recommendation that says that you believe that this should be on a corporate risk register and have the necessary mitigations and actions in place. So I think when we get to that point, that's something that we could add in.
Yeah, perfect. So that's on item 9 of the agenda for today is the risk register, and I think that there's already an invitation, if you like, for us to look at that. So if we pick that up on item 9, Roger, are you happy we do that?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, very happy.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, just confirming. So, Roger, that concludes your update.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay,
so I think, as I said, everything else is more or less contained in here. And Claire, if she's coming onto the meeting later on, is that there was a meeting this morning of the board, which I unfortunately couldn't attend, to decide upon the final agreement or recommendations to government, and I think that's what she's probably going to talk about. So when she does come on, it will be certainly very hot off the press. And there was a 36-page document, I think it was, sent out last night.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that update. So I guess just to conclude that agenda item, if we maybe formulate a recommendation, just that the pension board notes the update from Councillor Price. Everyone happy with that? I'll take that as a yes. I know Jackie last time, I can't remember what the terminology you used last time, but we had.
It's fine if everyone unmutes and verbally agrees. That's fine.
Could we have an unmute and verbal agreement?
Yep, I'm happy.
Yes, I'm happy.
Yep.
I think it was a hubbub last time, so
hubbub agreement is great.
We'll take that as agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is the firefighter pensions officer group. Sadly, I was supposed to attend this, but sadly I had to send my apologies because I had to do a broadcast for the chief fire officer, which clashed at the same time. I also believe, and I'm going to look towards Richard as deputy chairman. He was unable to attend because of short notice, because it was quite a short notice.
The FPOG I did attend.
Is that? Sorry, I missed that, Ollie.
Yes, sorry, Stu. The FPOG in July I did attend, so I'm more than happy to give a verbal update on that. I fear, though, much as per Councillor Price, some of it may be superseded by Claire later on this afternoon.
Okay, that'd be great then. Thanks.
Okay. In which case, Claire started off the FPOG meeting really with trying to give us some clarity around the aims of MacLeod versus Sargent. Removing discrimination entirely by primary legislation, with the remedy period being beginning of April 15 to end of March 22. Key issue now is when the member makes that choice. What in a sense is a simple decision has an awful lot of complexities that will result from it. An immediate decision is essentially clean and simple. However, if that member makes the wrong decision, there's then the potential for further legal claims to result. And I think it's very clear the government are incredibly keen to avoid any potential for further legal action against them. If the member makes a decision at the point of retirement, there is then the issue of retrospective tax relief and how that might work or not. Currently, tax owed by HMRC to an individual, that goes back indefinitely. Tax owed by an individual to HMRC, that only goes back 4 years. And potentially we would have people making that decision and then potentially owing tax over a period greater than 4 years. So there's clearly a lot of work still to be done. Claire did indicate that real effort was being made to gain the right guidance, and that's particularly around the higher tier ill health benefit for some immediate decisions. The annual allowance calculation issues for tax, no answers, and the more it's looked into, the more questions that seem to arise. So she may be able to provide some clarity on that later today. Moving on from the MacLeod versus Sargent to O'Brien and Matthews, that's where the modified RDS pensions, effectively giving RDS people the equivalent of a 1992 scheme, that will now go back indefinitely. And I imagine Claire will give us a further update on that later on today. And the SAB update that Claire gave, this was, I think, the end of July now, and that was around the immediate detriment cases, which I think I've already mentioned. Additionally, the cost cap on the 2015 scheme, where effectively the benefits being paid from the 2015 scheme are insufficient compared with the contributions being made by members. The result of that would be that the benefit to members should go up. The government put a brake on that until the current legal cases were over. However, the effect of the raising of member benefits as a result of that cost cap might have implications for the choice that the member then makes around the 92, 2015 or 2022 schemes. So really awaiting some more information on that. One of the outcomes is that no matter how much work is done on annual benefit statements, they can clearly only reflect what is fact now. And we all know that what is fact now is going to change in the future. So I think it's probably important for us to make clear that whilst annual benefit statements are technically correct at the date they're issued, that the benefits are likely to change, and in some cases quite significantly in the future. The other point I should make is that the government consultation closes in 3 days' time regarding the 2022 scheme, and from that whether the board wish to make a response. And that really is the update from me regarding the FPOG meeting. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Rich. Any questions? Okie doke. So I think the consultation, I think we'll pick up a little bit later on in the agenda around that last point. But if there's no other questions, if I just propose, sorry, Mark Hiltz. Mark.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry?
Ollie, I'm not sure whether this would be a question for now or one for perhaps Claire later. But it might concern what you said about higher tier ill health benefits. I have got a question on that, but would that be more appropriate for Claire to answer it later about independently qualified medical practitioners and stuff like that? Whether we go, if people are being considered for ill health benefits, retirement, that kind of thing, are we currently in a situation where we ask the independently qualified medical practitioner to consider things based on the legacy scheme or the better scheme? Is that, you know, that's the, it's more of a technical question. I'm thinking it might be for Claire later.
Claire, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I can answer that one for you, Mark. If we have got any members that are retiring, that've got transitional benefits and they're retiring on ill health, we are currently asking the IQMP to assess based on legacy and 2015 scheme benefits, so that we can then make a decision about whether we're actually, you know, which road we're going down.
Okay, thank you.
Okie dokes. Okay, thanks. Thank you for the question. Thanks for the update. So conclude that with a recommendation that the pensions board note the update from Richard. Can I have an unmute and a quick yay, please?
Yay.
Great.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Ollie, for that. So if we move on to item 8, which is the first of our reports, which on page 11 of our agenda packs, which is the usual legislation and LGA update report. Rob, am I coming to you?
Yeah, thanks, Stu. Yeah, so as I normally say for this one is mainly to make sure that you know that we're on top of all the legislation and various things coming through, and to make sure that the board can see that that we are reacting to things as and when required. Just a couple of bits I'd like to pull out, if I may. So paragraph 7 on page 12 talks about the LGA have recommended some suggested wording for fire and rescue authorities to use in job adverts, you know, to pull out the key issues around annual allowance and lifetime allowance and temporary promotions and positions. So we've asked the board for their views on this. The only reason we've said that is whilst it sounds like a good idea, it is a technically complex area, and certainly, you know, I'd have concerns about making job adverts very, very complex with lots of information, which some people may not necessarily understand. But I get the logic behind doing it, and we just really wanted to get the board's views as to whether or not we thought that was a sensible idea, or we did something similar, but potentially, you know, cut down. Just so we reduce the amount of information, but we signpost people to say, if you're considering this, you need to be aware of the impact on your allowances and you know, your pensionable status, etc. So happy to take some views from the board.
Okay, I've got Councillor Price.
Thank you. I mean, my personal opinion would be is that pensions is one of those issues which I would have thought would be discussed at interview, or at that particular point, because you can discuss it in much more depth. I think that obviously in an advert you're trying to get over what the job is about, and therefore people are applying for that particular job, and then coming out of that there are probably a number of issues which the prospective person would want to ask if they got to interview, which could then be sorted at that point. But maybe just a couple of words in an advert, if you want to put anything about pensions, just saying any effect upon pensions can be discussed at a later stage, if you're interested. I don't think to put it in great detail is really necessary.
Can I just come back on that, Stu? I guess the only danger, Councillor Price, of potentially doing something like that at interview is that assumes that the interview panel know all about annual allowances and lifetime allowances and, you know, the status of temporary promotions, etc. So I think there is some danger in that, but I agree with you. Put in more of a sort of a signpost in the advert is probably better than a lot of detail, but we'll take some other views.
Okay, I have got some other views. So I've got Rich Scarth, then Mark, then Ollie. So Rich.
Yes, I was going to add similarly that I think a generic reference that points to further guidance would be appropriate. And as Rob says, I think the danger of an interview panel or an interviewer talking about it in any detail, they may well just get wrapped up in knots. So I wouldn't have thought that would be particularly appropriate. I've got another question, Stu, which we might want to come back to about the temporary promotions, which is relevant to this, but if we can come back to that perhaps after we've covered this point.
Yeah, we will do. Okay, thanks, Rich. Mark?
Hi, I've had two officers come up to me in recent days asking about a huge tax bill that they've just received and had no clue about it. And I've not really been in a position to be able to 100% work out what the issues are. Perhaps a little bit of input from Claire at some point might be worthwhile from our points of view, especially when I'm getting people approaching me. I've only just become a member of the board, and you know, word gets around, people start asking you questions. I think what Rob Carr suggested about a signpost about the tax implications might be a worthwhile thing to do, but also some input for us on what these rules are, so that we can at least give people who ask us a bit of a few pointers, or point them to the right direction where it needs to, where they need to look. Because when officers come up to me and say, "I've just got a £12,000 tax bill, have you any idea why?" It's unrealistic for me to be able to say with any accuracy what it is, but it'd be handy to know the reasons why.
Okay, yeah, so I think that part of this, part of your membership of this board is that we do need to make sure that you've got the level of detail, and there was a training needs assessment that was done a little while ago, so we probably need to redo that with some new members on board. Is that something, Rob, that maybe could be rerun again at that TNA?
Yeah, I think we can run the TNA again. I think we can also do a sort of a refresher on the annual allowance and lifetime allowance, not just from a theoretical point of view, but maybe run through a few practical examples. So I get quite a lot of questions on annual allowance, Mark, and the advice I often give to somebody is, if this is a permanent increase in your position, i.e. it's an ongoing increase to your salary, which will be in place until you retire, then actually, even though you've got a tax bill, if you get the scheme to pay that for you, you will still end up with more retirement benefits than otherwise you would have done. So whilst a 12,000 tax bill is not good on the face of it, overall your retirement benefits will be better. Now, some of that will be obviously complicated by McLeod, etc. But I think we can give some basic examples like that as to what gives rise to it, how it's worked out, but what it means for your retirement benefits.
Okay, so there's probably a couple of different things. There's one specifically around board membership and awareness of things, and then there's something that you did a few years ago, Rob, which was more internally for officers and that awareness, which probably based on McLeod and all the interest, it may well be worth us thinking about something in the future. Yeah. Okay, Ollie.
Thank you, Stu. Kind of going back to, I think, the original point around job advertisements. Personally, I would rather see a signpost and echo Rich Scarth's thoughts. Have a signposting in any adverts. Please don't put those into interviews, because I think there's a real risk of differing discussions which aren't perhaps towing the line that we would need to tow. And actually, if they're signposted at point of application to a common place where we can control what information is given to them, there's kind of minimal risk of wrong information being given, and every applicant has got as much information as they wish. As far as the annual allowances, I'm sure, Mark, you'll get training in due course, and from personal experience, it is quite good, and it will probably make your brain hurt for the first day or so, but it's really worthwhile. I think my experience with other people has been that there's a really clear breakdown of the tax charge, why it's arisen, and perhaps it's just a case of getting to the right level of paperwork to help those individuals better understand it.
Right, good. Councillor Price, do you want to come in just on that point before I go to Rich?
I do. I was surprised to hear Mark say about somebody getting a £12,000 tax bill, because I thought the government had changed something recently and it increased the amount, which really sort of took most people out of the tax situation. Or have I got it totally wrong?
So that was in response to higher earners, Councillor Price. So they significantly increased the threshold where your allowance was tapered, which has a significant impact. But I think that now, Claire will hopefully nod, you have to be on more than 150,000 before that comes in. So actually it doesn't affect most people. So that's the only change that's been made recently. So generally speaking, all of the other annual allowance issues are still in play.
Okay, Rich, you had a point that was slightly different that you wanted to
yeah, so just briefly, and actually just to finish on the tax bill coming as a surprise, that if that's happened to a member, that would suggest that member's perhaps not up to speed and in tune with their pension statements. So all the more reason to take an interest and understand the scheme as a member. That the second point, and apologies if this has been covered before, but the temporary promotion and whether that pay is pensionable, I dare say that we would have members that have temporary promotions that span both schemes, that would have been pre-2015 and then a post-2015. And I just wonder whether they're through that period, given that would be a change essentially to their terms and conditions, would that have been communicated to them? And is there a risk there that we might have people coming to us that they haven't been advised of a change to their conditions over that period? If that makes sense, might be one for Claire.
Well, as I know that Rob loves temporary promotions and pensions, surprised that you're not banging the screen.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that was funny because I was going to pass it off to Claire as well. So I think it's quite clear that if you remain in the 1992 scheme, then it remains pensionable, but in the form of an additional pension benefit. If once you're in the 2015 scheme, it is clear you cannot earn pension benefit arising from a temporary promotion. I'm just trying to think whether or not we did any comms at the time, Claire.
I'll be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head.
And I guess your point is, well, is it a change in contractual terms? Well, at the end of the day, it's a change in regulations associated with pensions, and I don't think we normally go back and change contracts as a result of that. But I think it's a fair point in terms of making people aware that is the case, and of course that will then be further complicated by the fact that the McLeod remedy will place people back into their legacy schemes, and then they've got to make a decision. So if they were on a temporary promotion, that's going to make that decision all the more complicated.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so just on that, so I think that what you were seeking from that bit was a view from the board. So hopefully that gives you a view around the signposting. Back to you around the rest of the report, if there's anything.
Yep. So the only other item I wanted to pick up was paragraph 9. So if Malcolm Eastwood were still on the board, he would certainly be chomping at the bit about this one. So those people who have been on the board for some time, the pension schemes bill is basically putting in place what Malcolm has been talking about for some time, which is for people on a defined contribution scheme to have a dashboard with all of their pension pots and arrangements in a single place, which I think we've discussed at the board before. Probably makes sense for people on defined contribution schemes, but if you then try to apply that to defined benefit schemes, which is what Firefighters pension scheme is, it starts to make less sense. So at the moment, the pension schemes bill only applies to private sector schemes. But as the note says, no doubt at some point they will be looking to introduce it for public sector. Although all I would say is that will be significantly difficult anywhere before April 2022. Once things have settled down in terms of the remedy position.
Councillor Price.
Thank you. I think that the dashboards, it was quite interesting because that in emails that I saw floating around and discussions with Malcolm was against dashboards, whereas the new chairman is very much in favour of dashboards. And there was quite a interesting discussion between Malcolm and the new chairman over that particular issue. So I think that she will be pushing dashboards most definitely.
Right, so okay, so if we take ourselves, so happy to go down to paragraph 20 of the report. I'm presuming that you're happy with that, Rob? Yeah. So there's a recommendation for the board, us to note the contents of the report. So is everyone happy to note the contents?
Yep, happy.
Agreed.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Right, that takes us to item 9 on the agenda, which is the status report and risk register. So if I take you to page 55 of the agenda packs, and I'll go back to Rob, I think.
Yeah, thanks. So the first item to draw out was the risk register, and asking whether or not the board wished to consider putting that on. Councillor Price has already spoken about that. So I guess the question is, the rest of the board in agreement that it should be a separate item on the risk register, but also we should have a recommendation to the authority that it should be included on the corporate risk register as well.
Okay, so I'm looking around other board members. Are other board members in agreement with that? So we've got a thumbs up from Ollie. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think that gives you that agreement there, Rob. Joe, just before.
Yeah, apologies, Stu, thank you very much. Is this obviously also being added onto the shadow CFA risk register as well? Because obviously there's issues that will come from the Combined Fire Authority with information flowing from the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point, because actually the impact will be in that period, won't it? So yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So on that, I think agreed that on there as a separate item. Do you need anything more than that to work through, Rob?
No, that's fine. We can work with that.
All right.
Then just going on to paragraph 8. So obviously we've had quite a lot of discussion already about the Sargent case, and we've got the session with Claire later on. So I wasn't going to go into too much detail on this. What I would say to you as board members is it clearly is the key item and possibly the most complex thing I've ever dealt with in my entire career, and that's saying something. So what I would say to you is it's important that you understand it. Whether I would expect you to read the full 70-odd page document, probably not. But we've included within this report Appendix C, which is the Home Office frequently asked questions, and then Claire has also done a summary in Appendix D, which also raises all of the questions that are as yet unanswered, or should I say, not all of them. It raises a number of them. There just are so many questions that are currently unanswered within the consultation document. So we've got quite a long way to go. So I would urge you to familiarise yourself with Appendix C and Appendix D, and clearly come back. And I guess if we're going to do some future training session, then we could put something around McLeod Sergeant on there as well, just to get board members' knowledge up to a good standard. So just in terms of what's been talked about the level of administration and complication, so down to paragraph 17. So obviously Claire is the employer pension manager, and we have separate groups for fire schemes, police schemes, LGPS, and we have an administration group. So obviously all four of those are currently looking at McLeod as an issue, and we're looking at, well, how much work can we actually do now in order to get ourselves ready, but what other work have we got to wait until we know more about what is happening from the government, because we clearly don't want to be doing work that's abortive. So it's a difficult line to tread. As I've said in the past, I think we're in quite a lucky position to have Claire's post at all. Certainly most other authorities don't have that dedicated level of employer knowledge and resource. So I think we're well placed, but it is clear we will need to stand up quite a task force in terms of project management, pension administration, salaries, experts, all that sort of thing, in order to be able to work this stuff through, let alone making changes to systems and all the rest of it. So just for your knowledge, yeah, we're fully aware of it. We are staffing up as and when we think that's the right time to do it. But clearly both this board and probably the shadow authority need to keep a close eye on this to make sure that we're doing what we should be doing. So I'll leave it there on that one.
Okay, Councillor Price.
Thank you. I think that, are we keeping a record, Rob, of all these extra costs, which at some point we may, and I put the word may very strongly in, be able to claim back from government, because it's a government pension scheme. There, it's we're only administering it, and therefore, to me, is that our finances as a fire authority are tight. We've got to be very careful where we spend money, and if we incur a lot of extra costs here, and this is where the risk is to the authority, is spending a lot of money here, then we need to be trying to find ways of getting it back from government. And under new burdens, I would have thought there is a case. Now, I think it's an area which certainly the other elected members on the board have actually spoken about, and trying to persuade the government that they've got to pay these bills. So I suppose from our point of view is, if we're taking on extra staff, and if Claire is spending extra time of her own time in doing this, are we keeping a record of that? So at least we've got an amount we can actually go back to them with and say, well, this is what the cost has been so far.
Yeah, so at the moment, effectively it's an opportunity cost, so we've not spent any additional extra physical cash on it. But absolutely, at the point that we need to stand up a team to run this through, and if we have to pay for system changes, then those will be extra costs. We will make sure that we record those, because the other issue that so the government will no doubt say initially, well, that's an employer responsibility and therefore employers have to meet it. So we would aim to be recovering that from Hampshire Fire, Hampshire Constabulary and Hampshire County Council in terms of those additional resources. But absolutely, we would want to keep a record of that and be lobbying the government that they ought to be paying for it because they've caused it. So yes, absolutely, we will keep a track of what we're spending.
Okay, brilliant. Just a question on Appendix D in particular, I guess. Is that something that we thought would be useful to share across the organisation? Just like the information, because it's distilled down. It's quite. I think it reads, it's good, simple. It's factual, and it gets rid of all.
Yep. So I had a meeting with the unions a week or so back where we talked about the approach to potentially putting out some communication on this. And even a draft bullet point note that I wrote, they felt was too long and too complex. So what they said is, yes, do something much shorter and signpost to some of the information. So I guess as these are published papers, we can signpost to Appendix to the frequently asked questions and Appendix D and refer people to those. So yeah, very happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would. I think for me that would be really useful, because I know that a lot of people want to know or have heard and don't know a lot of the facts. So I think that would be useful just to be able to signpost them to that. I wonder if that could go on. Like the pensions website as I don't know if that's easy to add. I'm saying that as a complete novice on websites, that you can put something on there that says, oh yeah, let me ask about that. Possibly. Okay. Do you want to anything else?
Just moving on. So mention was made of the O'Brien case, or also called the Matthews case. That's paragraphs 22 and 23, as it relates to part-time workers directive and the extent to which part-time work contributes to your pension. So again, that's a further complication. We're expecting a consultation on that at some point. One of the issues that we raised within the employer groups is that by the time you get the McLeod case and then O'Brien on top of that, and then other changes that are coming in, relating to sex discrimination, etc., you potentially end up with a very complex overlapping set of legislative changes, which just makes the job of the administrator to put those in place even more difficult. So yes, certainly this one in particular will fall into that category. So just moving down to the member portal. So I don't know whether it's as a result of your efforts, Stu, but we have seen a 5% increase in the numbers registered. And whilst that's good, at the end of the day, we still are only sitting at 32%. And as somebody made the comment earlier, it is important that employees take responsibility for understanding their pension position. And when we've talked about McLeod and putting different bits of information on annual benefit statements, well, that's still not a lot of use if only 32% of people are actually able to access them. So, we've got to try to raise that number because it's going to become even more important in order for people to understand what sorts of decisions they might need to make in the future and what it means to them.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
Mark?
Yes, I had a Fire Brigades Union meeting yesterday, and I've asked for the pensions portal details to be put on the minutes of the meeting and then disseminated down to the various branches in order for this to start to take a hold. I've actually gone through the logging onto the members portal and watched a few people do it as well. And a lot of the time, what we're finding is we get to a certain stage and I've forgotten this or I've forgotten that, or, because perhaps they've previously logged on years ago and they've forgotten it. And they put they're certain that they're correct details in. And then it just, after a few attempts, which have been unsuccessful, it seems to me that they sort of give up sometimes, or they haven't got access. There's people that can't remember where to get hold of their national insurance numbers and that kind of thing. I know it's on the employee self-service, but I'm having to talk them through all these separate steps, and I don't know what the actual answer to that part is, but just a reassurance to you on the pensions board that I'm certainly attempting to try and get the word out from my end, and that's all I had to say, really.
I mean, it'd be good, Mark, if you could give a few of those sort of practical examples and problems that are coming through to Claire, and then she can work with the pension services team to sort of try and get out some simple, if you get this problem, then do this, or because I know from my own point of view, I very often forget my own login. One of the things I always forget is I think the login name is all in capitals, which is a bit unusual for a sort of username. So if people don't remember that, then chances are they're going to have a problem. So we might be able to produce a little fact sheet for you to make available to help people with that login on.
Thank you.
Yeah, that might be useful. Rich Scarf?
Yeah, just to add that the work that Mark's doing to raise awareness and disseminate through the FBU, we should look to replicate with local rep bodies of the equivalent on-call bodies too.
Yeah, so I had a previous conversation with Ricky and Paul Riddell, who's the FOA rep as well. So, but we'll take that forward to continue with that. There is a joint trade union meeting which is held every month at the moment, and I've asked for that, for the pensions to be put on that, just as a reminder each month, just because I think that it seems that we're getting some forward traction, but it's really slow, and it just feels like it just needs to be repeated on a case by case, almost like month by month basis. But yeah, good point. Thanks, Rich. Mark, did you want to come in again?
Only to say, Stuart, that I'm not exclusively just advising FBU members. I don't particularly see my role on this board exclusively as that. I'll happily give this advice to anybody, and I have. So just as a reassurance that that's the case. I don't just stand with my FBU hat on.
No, but I think it's good. It's a good connection to have into the trade unions, something that we've been, seeking for a little while. So yeah, thank you, Mark. Councillor Price.
Thank you. Rob, on page 60, can you explain to me you've got the three charts there, and as I read the second chart, it says percentage of actives per age range, and the next one it says percentage of all actives per age range. What is the difference between those two? Because obviously the percentage of registered and non-registered is quite different.
I'll leave that one to Claire.
Thank you. So I think the middle box there is looking. So if you the top box is saying that is a total of 128, and that's just splitting that on the age range. That's just giving you the percentage. So you've got the numbers in the box above, and then that's just showing it as a percentage. The total at the bottom is then looking at the total number of actives in total. So that will be the percentage per age range for all of the actives, which is 986 records. Does that make any more sense?
So that's basically saying that there are more people registered in the 40 to 50 years age range than any other range on that line.
I understand the percentages, and I understand looking at the figures at the top, and what I don't understand is the difference in the wording. It says percentage of actives per age range, and then in the bottom one is a percentage of all actives. Well, surely all actives are actives. What is the definition of the two different groupings? It's the word all in there. It doesn't make
Yeah, no, I get the point you're making. Well, I quite often ask Claire about these ones, so I think, as you know, Claire, I do find the different percentages confusing. I'm the head of finance, so I think we'll take that away and look at it, and perhaps stick with just one set of percentages which best represents what we're trying to get across, I think.
So, as I understand from the conversation, is the bottom one is really the percentages of people who are registered and the ones who are not registered is the best one to go by, because you know, the percentage is so different compared with the middle one, and so I take it it's the bottom one which really we have the low percentage, and that ties up with, I think, your comments on the previous page of 27 to 32.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just moving on. Mark, you want to come in? Just moving on to the combined fire authority, so paragraph 32. A couple of points for you to note there. So because the new CFA is a new entity, we are required by HMRC to go through auto enrolment as part of the creation of the new CFA. So obviously that does cause issues, because it wasn't that long ago that some members were auto enrolled into the scheme, and normally you would wait 3 years before that happened again, but basically everybody will have to go through it again on the 1st of April 2021. So that's just to let you know, we'll do all the normal comms around that and what people need to do to opt out, etc. But just to make you know that is slightly different to the normal process. And then under 34 and 35, it's just to say that, again, as we move into a new CFA, we need to make a new decision as to whether or not temporary promotions are to be pensionable for the fire pension schemes of 1992 and 2006. So again, we'll wrap all of that up into a report to the Shadow Authority in due course. And then finally under CFA board membership, you'll recall we had a discussion last time about what we would do about going into a new pension board for the new CFA, and we did commit to bringing you back a report on options. You'll notice you haven't got a report on options, and that's because I think really in the meantime the thing sorted itself out. So I think within the board we'd said that we would be keen to get Isle of Wight representation on the new CFA board. We had 2 members of the Isle of Wight pension board who were employees who both requested to come on to the new CFA pension board when it was created. So that was good. The only issue that we had was that they were both employee representatives, and as you know, we have to have an equal number of employee and employer reps. So we contacted them and asked whether or not either of them would be happy to become an employer rep, because I think we made the point that anybody looking at our pension board wouldn't really know who was a employer versus employee rep anyway, because it's very collaborative, etc. And one of those did agree to do that. So our recommendation, which again will have to be tied up by the Shadow Authority, is that we go to a new CFA pension board that has 4 employer reps and 4 employee reps, and the existing representation of this board plus the 2 members from the Isle of Wight constitute that new board. So we just wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with that arrangement. I actually think it's a really good result from where we were, but clearly that's my opinion, and you need to be happy with it as well.
Okay, so thank you, Rob. So if there's no other questions or comments for Rob, what we'll do is if I can take you down to paragraph 40, this easier said than done, I think, for the recommendations here. So the first recommendation is that the content of the report be noted by the Firefighters Pension Board. So if we can have a general unmute and view.
Yep, all good.
Okay, perfect. So risk register, we probably need to change this one. Jackie, did you have? I thought or suggestion on this one?
Could we just add with the addition of a further risk associated with the McLeod remedy, which should also be
because we want that escalated as well, don't we?
Should also be recommended to the full authority for inclusion on the corporate risk register. And
do we need to include the shadow authority as well?
And the shadow authority. I think if the board is content, that we'll take that away and come up with something, and then if you can approve that, Stu, as the chairman, I think we know what we're trying to achieve.
Sorry, can I just yes, it might be worth. I had a thought about an additional sorry, Chairman. Just to say about the Firefighters Pension Board, direct officers to look further into the proposal to include pensions in the corporate risk register and go through the necessary governance to make this happen. It just gives officers time to have a look what's the right governance route and take that forward, if that would be agreeable for members. I'm happy to read it out again if you need me to.
I think we're all happy with what we're trying to achieve, and I think that if we tidy up are we able to tidy up the kind of wording, but I think that the spirit of it, we're all in agreement. I'm looking to fellow board members. Everyone happy with that agreement?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, brilliant. Then we've got 42. Response to the public service pension schemes consultation. So this is Appendix E, and the response on behalf of the board is endorsed.
Agreed.
Everyone happy?
Yeah.
43, that the proposal about the treatment of temporary promotions under the CFA as set out between paragraphs 21 and 22 is endorsed by the pension board, and a report is taken to the shadow authority recommending a formal decision to this effect. So is everyone happy with that?
Agreed.
Agreed.
And then finally, 44, the proposal around the membership. So this is the membership of the future board under the CFA, and a report equally is taken to the shadow board for approval for future, which is 4 and 4. Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Joe.
Agreed.
I just wanted to just jump in at this point and say to Claire and to Rob, I'm sorry for not confirming, but I have basically copied and pasted this into a report for the Isle of Wight Fire Pension Board, which is being held on the 14th. So I'm effectively going to copy those recommendations at 43 and 44 to the Isle of Wight Board to say that they will be passing those up as to our representatives on the Combined Fire Authority, so that, you know, we've got the parallel recommendation from the Isle of Wight to match the recommendation from Hampshire. So thank you for letting me copy your papers.
Okey doke. Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the meeting. So unless anyone has got anything desperately urgent, what we will do is conclude the meeting. Thank you for your time. I'll just remind you that we do have an update from Claire, but Claire's not joined us yet. So my proposal is we conclude the meeting, and we'll come back to Claire in just 30 seconds from the looks of things. Okay, so Rob, could you stop filming now, please?
So it's all right, Claire, we're just stopping filming. If you wonder why we're all just